Alright, so 4 weeks ago at Ironman Australia, I had a race that I was, I'd say, less than pleased with, but just as I was finishing the race, the sun was going down, they started handing out glow sticks. I made sure to cross over on the other side of the road and collect one just before I went and finished the shoot, because I knew it was going to be some pretty powerful motivation. So, we'll sit that there and get back to training. Alright, so we're 1 month on from Ironman Australia now, and it's pretty much time to get back into some good serious training. I had a couple of weeks easy, not following anything too structured, but I'm still pretty much as motivated as ever to try and get to this sub 9 Ironman, so it's really time to get back into some training here now. Over the last couple of weeks, it's been good to sort of sit back and reflect and try and think of all the things that I might have got wrong in the lead up to the last Ironman. Ultimately, I have mentally just put it down as it was just a bad day, and I don't think I performed to what I was capable of. So I don't want to go back through and tear out everything that we did in the lead up and change everything completely, but I do want to find ways to improve my training going forwards. And I had a really good chat with my coach. We actually recorded it and he posted it up on his podcast, so I'll put a link to that in the description or in the comments if you want to go and listen to that. And we kind of just ran through all the things I think we just didn't do right in the lead up to it. And I think fundamentally the thing we got wrong the most was picking a power goal on the bike. So we thought 220 watts is what I would be able to hold. And we based that off after the indoor Ironman, I held 207 watts. And we thought, okay, sweet. In 6 months' time with good training, I should be able to hold about 220 watts. And so when we got back into training, we just picked 220 and I did a lot of sessions around that power. And what happened was I started ignoring signs like heart rate or lactate or feel, where I thought, this isn't comfortable. This doesn't feel like Ironman pace. But because I thought, okay, well, I should be able to hold this eventually. I should be capable of this. If I just spend a lot of time at this intensity, then I should adapt to it. And I think we kind of, in a way, put the cart before the horse there. And what we should have been doing is hitting specific intensity zones rather than trying to hit specific power numbers. So one thing we are going to change a lot now, and I'll talk about that sort of new approach to training that we came up with during that conversation. At the moment, we're going to work on a really good aerobic base, but I think the thing that's going to change most of my training is really focusing on intensity control throughout all my sessions, and especially the aerobic sessions. So I want to make sure that if I'm doing a good aerobic ride, that I'm not too low and I'm not too high. So that's just going to come from regulating heart rate and lactate. So a lot more testing. And I think that's one thing I want to incorporate into my weekly training, but also broader. I would like to, moving forwards, we're going to develop a protocol where we essentially think of it as a 3.5 week training block with maybe 1 or 2 days easy into a big Saturday test session. And on this Saturday test session, I want to replicate, let's say, the demands of an Ironman, and I want to use it to benchmark my improvements over time to make sure that the training we are doing, I am actually responding to. And that's basically after 3 weeks of easy training. That was the first session we got back into, and we got back to where are we now and what do we need to work on moving forwards. I think we will change the protocol a little bit, but to start out with, it looked like this. So it was Saturday morning, we do 4x1K in the pool, which for that I held 16:38, 16:45, 16:42 and 16:56. So not great, but it's a start, about 140 per 100. Then on the bike, we had just indoors 3 hours of tempo riding, held between 215 to 220 watts for those 3 hours, with heart rate at 155 beats. And after each hour, lactate was 2.8, 2.0 and 1.9 millimole. So I think what that shows there is that I can hold a bit of higher power around the 2.8 millimole for a first hour, but eventually my power did start to drop down to the point that I could only hold, let's say, 2 millimole or 1.9 millimole. So I guess that just really shows that I was brought back down with those physical limitations to essentially what my first aerobic threshold is, or lactate threshold is. Straight off the bike, and then we go into a run, 8K at 155 beats per minute, and that's because I've done the indoor Ironman and Ironman Australia now running at 155 beats, so I guess that basically just is my Ironman heart rate. And what we're going to look at there is pace, obviously, but also power as more relevant. So 270 watts or 4 minutes, 58 seconds per kilometer. So look, Not in great shape, but considering I had a few weeks off, that's, I'm still pretty happy with it. It's a solid baseline, and moving forwards, there's a lot we can work on, and I'm really expecting good results with better intensity control. And week to week, I also want to include more testing in there. Again, it might stem somewhat from an insecurity here where it's like, okay, I don't want to just go into a training block, close my eyes, and then, see what happens at the end of it. I do want to make sure week to week we are at least tracking in the right direction. And so I'm probably looking to incorporate something along the lines of each week doing 1K for time in the pool, and hoping that eventually I can get that down to where I'm holding below 130 per 100, because if I'm going to swim 57 minutes in an Ironman swim, which is my ultimate goal, I need to be swimming about 130 per 100. So on the bike, I'll be looking to do aerobic sessions, but I want to make sure that I'm controlling my lactate to be about 1.5 millimole. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at whatever my power and heart rate is for that, and that's what I'm going to benchmark week to week. So doing an aerobic session, holding 1.5 millimole as lactate, and then making sure that my power and heart rate are hopefully trending in the right direction. I think to go sub 9 in an Ironman, I'm going to need my, let's say, that aerobic zone to be somewhere around the 220 to 230 watt range. At the moment, it's 200 watts. Finally, just for the run, we're going to do 30 minutes at 155 beats per minute, and just look at pace, power, and lactate for that one. So again, hopefully I can get that 155 beats per minute with about a 0.8 millimole lactate to be around that 415 per kilometer to get me to hopefully a sub 3 marathon in an Ironman. So as well as the monthly sessions there where we are trying to simulate the demands of an Ironman, I will still do standard things like, the lactate profile testing. Did that on the bike as well as these sessions, and I think LT1, I'll have all the numbers up on the screen so you can see them, but it was something like 1.5 millimole, or LT1 was about 200 watts, and then my second lactate threshold was 240 watts, I think, from memory, but I'll have it up on the screen so you can see it there. Obviously, the second lactate threshold needs to come up. It's got to be at least 280 to 300 watts, in all honesty, I think, if I'm going to ride at, let's say, 230 watts for an Ironman. At the moment, the focus on this block here, just as we're starting to get back into it, I'm going to do 4 weeks of a really good aerobic intervention and try and really control my intensity to be just below that LT1 for a lot of sessions. But moving forwards, we are going to have to do a lot of threshold work, I think. And it's something I did avoid, honestly, in the last 6 months and this is what I think I kind of got wrong in the training program, is I wasn't at all concerned with doing top end threshold work, and I wasn't at all concerned with doing the easy base mile work. All I wanted to do, especially on the bike, was pick my target power, 220 watts, great, spend tons of time at that, a little bit above, a little bit below, but just my theory was if I spend a lot of time at this, my body will adapt to it, and then therefore I'll be able to hold it, for 5 hours in the race. I think what ended up happening was I just spent a lot of time in this gray zone training area, and I wasn't raising my threshold, I wasn't raising my second lactate threshold, and I wasn't raising my first lactate threshold. So that's a mistake I don't want to repeat in the future. And it's not that I'm going to take this polarized training approach, it's that I'm going to have specific intentions with each session, and it's either going to be to raise my threshold or to raise my aerobic threshold. So look, everything on this YouTube channel, all my training is still geared towards a sub 9 Ironman. I have absolutely no expectations on how long that's going to take, and I'm not in any rush at all. It looks likely that I'm going to book Ironman Western Australia for the end of the year. It's a flat, fast course where if I'm in good shape, there's a chance I could go sub 9, but I'm not going to book that until I'm at least confident that I have the fitness to give that a real challenge. Coming off a 10-hour and 40-minute Ironman, it's a bit of a confidence blow, and I want to make sure that throughout these testing sessions and throughout the training of the next couple months, I am actually improving to the point that I feel like I can justify flying all the way to the other side of the country and spending thousands of dollars on a race, which is no insignificant feat. I'm not going to spend all that money if I don't feel as though I'm in the kind of shape that I need to be in to achieve my goal, basically. So yeah, at this stage, I'm just head down, straight into training, which in all honesty, is the thing I enjoy the most about triathlon, is just this training and, figuring out exactly what we need to do, writing it out, planning it out, and trying to problem solve to get towards this sub 9 hour Ironman. It's, in all honesty, it is a lot of fun, even though, there's some brutal race results like I had up at Port Macquarie, and it's kind of humbling and painful all the time. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't really questioning my training approach in the lead up to it, and you know, my abilities in the sport were definitely came under question for those couple of weeks after it. But I think mentally moving forwards, I just need to think of it as a fun challenge to try and get my fitness to this level. I do think it's possible, but I think it's a very big ask. So that's kind of what's the most motivating part about it. So look, with all that being said, we're back to training now. I want to try and take a far more, let's say, analytical approach to it. Obviously, everything in triathlon I share. I don't hide any stats, data, diet, anything like that. I have changed up my diet quite a bit at the moment, but I'll wait till the next videos to mention that because I'm waiting on some doctor's results, so it's obviously pretty significant. And I don't want to go into any depths until I've actually consulted with some professionals on what's happening. But yeah, that's something that I'll cover off in another video. But yeah, look, for now, let's just get into this week's training log. First week back, and it's week 1 of the aerobic training log, okay? Okay, so the first session on Monday, and this is kind of going to set the standard for what's basically just an average bike ride for me now. 2 hours, moderate, all right? And this is something that I basically said to my coach in this that longer conversation we had that you can find the link to. It's just on Spotify. I said, look, I think we need to be doing at least 2 hours a day on the bike if we want to develop a really good aerobic base. Reason is because I think with running, I respond really well to volume. I don't need to push crazy volume running, but I tend to find the more I run, the better I feel. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to equate that to the bike, I need to be doing, you know, let's say, I think what works for me is doing something like a 15K run a few days a week. So Tuesday, almost 20K, Thursday, almost 20K, and then Sunday, long run of about 30K. I think a 15K run is kind of similar to about a 2-hour ride, is at least how I think of it. So I said, look, I think we need to be doing 2 hours a day on the bike as a minimum. And that's exactly what we started out with on Monday, but it was a long weekend for the King's birthday. Happy birthday, Charles. So we were up in Port Macquarie that weekend for the long weekend, and that meant that this 2-hour ride was being done on the Port Macquarie Ironman course. And if you want to know how the Port Macquarie Ironman course feels to ride after having a pretty bad experience at an Ironman there 4 weeks before, it feels a lot like this.
Hey, mister, you gotta wear a helmet.
Don't worry about it. Oh, yeah, bring that shit on, man. Oh, God, I love it.
Awesome.
Oh, God, that hurt a little, but I'm all right.
My God, son, what the hell are you doing?
364 more days till next year's hockey tryouts. I gotta toughen up. Yeah!
So typically we would do a swim on the Monday, but being the public holiday, the pool was shut. So that's it for Monday. Tuesday morning, we start out with a 90-minute bike ride. Look, I know I just said that we need to be doing 2 hours a day on the bike, but look, this one had a lot of intensity with it. So 3 rounds of 9 by 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off. For the 40 second on, about 340 watts, 20 seconds off, just nice and easy, okay? Tuesday afternoon, we've got 3 rounds. We had a 1200, 1K, 800. For these ones, I'm aiming to do about 90 seconds per lap, which is 6 minutes per mile or 3:45 per kilometer. I can push it harder, but one thing I'm trying to work on the track at the moment is running at threshold and not running way over threshold. I think one thing I would often do on the track, and this kind of plays into this intensity control philosophy I have a lot more of at the moment, is trying not to go absolutely all out on the first couple reps to the point that I die in the last. So I'll have the splits up for that there, but yeah, about 3:45 per kilometer for even the 800s and the 1200s. Wednesday morning, and we're back to our basic session, 2 hours between 180 to 190 watts. So heart rate wise, we're gonna base these ones on about 140 beats per minute is our goal. So I never used to be a fan of erg mode. I always want to just, especially because I was training a lot indoors, I thought if I was always using erg mode, I'd become over-reliant on it and then I wouldn't be able to control power as well outdoors. Maybe that's the case, but I am using erg mode now, reason being because we are trying to make my training, especially these aerobic sessions, a lot more specific, really honing into like just below that LT1, 1.5 millimole or 140 beats per minute to really build a good solid aerobic base. And I think erg mode is the best thing we can use to make sure that all my sessions, the intensity control is top tier, absolutely nailing the exact effort that we want to be doing for all these rides. And I think if I can do a lot of these 2 hour aerobic rides throughout the week, over a few weeks to a few months, that's where things are really going to start to compound. So for the time being, erg mode's on, lactate testing even on the easy aerobic sessions, and trying to really nail intensity control at the moment. started out at 190 watts with my heart rate just above 140, and then did a lactate test, came in at 1.8, so I dropped it back down to 180 watts and brought my heart rate back down to like 138. So for these ones, as a guide, going to be going between 135 beats per minute to 145 beats per minute, and just using, obviously I don't want to base everything purely off lactate. Heart rate and feel does come into it as well, but we are really trying to target into that 1.5 millimole range. Wednesday afternoon, 4K swim, and within this one we're going to do that weekly 1K for time. So the time for this one was 16:21 or 1:38 per 100. So again, it's a little bit better than our first baseline session by a few seconds, but hopefully we can get that down to about, 15 minutes is my goal with these 1K time trials. So week to week, let's see how they improve. Thursday, I was down in Sydney for work, so look, I just couldn't get any training in that day. In all honesty, had to travel for work, and that's basically what happens sometimes. So a rare day off on Thursday. Then Friday morning, back in the pool for another 4K, set on this one, 4 400s, 4 200s, and then 100 max. That's the main set, and obviously the splits will be up on the screen. Friday lunch, just adding in a moderate run. Friday afternoon, and then we've got our staple ride again, 2 hours at 200 watts. So for this one, I tested lactate 1.6 millimole, I was pretty happy with that, and heart rate, pretty much perfect. 137 beats per minute. So interesting here, it's actually really interesting there to see the variance you have over the couple days. And one thing I tend to always find is I feel a lot stronger on the bike of an afternoon than I do in the morning. And this is interesting because that Friday afternoon where I can hold 200 watts at a lower lactate than when I was holding 180 watts a couple days before. A couple days before it was in the morning, this one's of an afternoon, lower lactate and lower heart rate. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, a lot of variables, but honestly, everything else is pretty similar. Saturday morning, long ride. This one's planned as 4 hours. I was just gonna do this one on the trainer. Saturday morning, got a 4-hour long ride. I would love to be doing this one outside today, but I bought the wrong size tubes for my wheels yesterday, so I guess we're gonna do this one indoors. Alright, 2.5 hours in, but I think I'm going to have to call it because, as you can probably hear, I think there's something wrong with the trainer. Alright, so I think what I'll do now is go do the run, then go get the actual right size tubes for the bike, and then do the rest of the ride outdoors. So I basically got straight off the bike because I didn't really want to totally destroy the trainer. I was still hoping I could fix it at this stage, and just started the run. So we just had a 10K run at about 155 beats per minute. For this one, we averaged 5 minutes per kilometer or 273 watts. Alright, so this is why I hate bikes. First of all, on the ride, the Wahoo kicker, it starts making funny noises and basically I have to stop. So I figure, alright, I'll go right outside. Then I go to chuck the wheels back on, but the tubes I've got, the valves aren't long enough for those rims. So I chuck the old training wheels back on. It's a full ordeal to adjust the brakes on that end. And then I go to put the same training wheel back on the front end. And this is rusted out and I can no longer adjust the brakes on the front end, which means we have to stay with the old wheel on there. Alright, no worries. Go for the ride outside, and now I can't find my spare pump. So I can't ride outside because if I get a flat, I'll be walking home. Can't ride inside because this isn't working. I'm trying to take this screw off here, but that's rusted out and I can't take that off, so I can't fix the Wahoo, I can't ride outside, and I'm basically stuffed. All these things are fixable, but they require a ton of money, and I'm so sick of spending money on push bikes. So all I can say is I really hate bikes. So that takes us to Sunday morning, and this is basically just our standard long run now moving forwards, at least for a while. It's just going to be 2 hours aerobic. We averaged 511 per kilometer, 262 watts or 140 beats per minute. And I'm not going to push anything too crazy with the long runs. I think 2 hours is going to be enough, at least for the next few weeks, maybe a month or two before we take it back up to the 30K mark. Even still, it would probably be good to try and improve the quality, I guess, of that long run rather than trying to just bang out a lot of kilometers up to that 30K mark. So that's it for the week. If we have a look at the totals, 8.5K in the pool just because Monday and Thursday we essentially couldn't swim, so nothing crazy there. running 58 kilometers, and on the bike 323 kilometers, or 10 hours, I just call it on the bike. I'm quite frustrated that this trainer's not working. I mean, maybe it's a good excuse for me to get outdoors, but I really do want to do a lot of trainer sessions just so I can regulate that intensity control. And I mean, it's really frustrating because they're so bloody expensive and the bills really pile up with triathlon. One thing I have thought about doing is setting up a weekly budget for how much I'm actually prepared to spend on triathlon. And that's another thing, like obviously I don't really hide anything on YouTube in terms of diet, health, training, stats, everything gets shared. And I thought maybe I could actually share the financial side of it, and then I'll start a spreadsheet and actually keep track of how much money I'm prepared to spend and how much money I am actually spending week to week, month to month, year to year on triathlons. Especially for people that are new to the sport, it's probably kind of a good thing to know before you just sign up for an Ironman. Obviously the entry fee is like $1,000, but there are a lot of other expenses that add up. So I thought maybe that could be an interesting thing to track week to week. I'm trying to set up a budget at the moment and figure out exactly how much I am prepared to spend on this bloody sport, because it's getting quite expensive, and especially when I kind of want to buy a road bike now, but they cost a ton. I need to get this bike fixed because the brakes aren't working, obviously, so I can't ride it outside until that gets a service, but I don't have a backup bike. That's why I want the road bike. And then the trainer's not working, so I can hardly even ride it indoors. So a bit of pressure there coming on me from the financial side. Maybe that'd be interesting to track. But look, we'll talk about that in another video. For now, it's just back to training, trying to ramp that volume back up, and we're still chasing this sub 9 Ironman.
Look at them yo-yos, that's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working.